Hello and welcome to the Anglo-Italian podcast for this Euro 2024 review. And we're going to be talking about Spain. So we are delighted to say we are joined by a Spanish football expert in Andre Iturralde. So Andre, how are you doing this evening? And more importantly, are you looking forward to the Euros?
I'm doing great, Adam. Thanks for having me, first off. And yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the Euros after wrapping up the whole Premier League season and European season as a whole. On the club side and the Champions League final, everything's now wrapped up, good to go. And yeah, very looking forward to jumping into the Euro Cup. It used to be called in Spain. It's funny in Spanish, it's usually called La Eurocopa, the Euro Cup. And in English, in England, it's always called the Euro. So I always found that interesting. Sometimes I'll slip up and no, you don't really call it the Euro Cup. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to the Euros.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But I'm definitely curious about Spain. I don't feel like I've followed too much about Spain since they've had their kind of transitional years, really. I feel like I've forgotten about maybe the kind of staples of this Spanish squad. And I'm hoping you can kind of shed a bit more light. But I suppose to start off with, what's kind of the feeling within Spain about this squad? Because I think optimistically, there's probably a lot of optimism about how this squad and group of players can perform from the outside. But I don't know, what's the feeling in Spain right now about this kind of group of players?
It's kind of tame, like negatively
Mm,
or positively, just kind of like in the middle. Like no one's like super down, no one's super excited either. It's just kind of
mhm,
existing in this weird kind of status of like maybe they can do really good performance, they can go far in the tournament. But at the same time, no one will be really disappointed if they are knocked out in the round of 16, the quarterfinals, or something like that. Everyone expects to get through the group stage, obviously, with the majority of number three teams going through of the group stage. So it would be very improbable to Spain not be at least fourth, best third, and or getting eliminated by Albania. But yeah, it's kind of strange, yeah, because since the World Cup and how much of a disappointment that was to get eliminated by Morocco and the round of 16, and how that went down, and then switching managers. It's just everything's just kind
mm,
of been just a sense of meh. Like everyone's
mm,
fine with it, but there's not much excitement. I thought there was a little bit more excitement probably around the World Cup. It is a World Cup. It's a little bit grander than a
mm.
Euro tournament, but still, yeah, everything's just kind of like wait and see a little bit.
Yeah, and how are you feeling in terms of the squad itself? Do you think it's a well-assembled group of players, or do you think there's areas right now that maybe could have been better developed, or maybe there's other players that could have been picked for the positions in question?
Yeah, and as far as picks, I think it's basically all good. Like you could
Mm,
maybe argue Pedro Porro from Tottenham. He
yeah.
could have maybe gotten in instead of Jesus Navas, who has gotten in basically out of just experience, having been there for a long
Mm,
time. I mean, he's not the most capped player in the world, but he has more than 50 caps with Spain, and he's 38, has that experience, that winning know-how of winning all those Europa Leagues with Sevilla. And so I think that's gone more in that direction because of that. But other than one or two like that one, everything's basically good. It's not like there's glaring talent that has been left out. And what's kind of brings me to the kind of sense, or just kind of the reality, that Spain just hasn't been able to keep that pace of producing very, very top tier elite talent ever since kind of the whole generation of Iniesta, Xavi,
mm,
Busquets, and all the main staples of the Euro, World Cup, Euro back to back from 2008 to 2012. Ever since then, they just haven't quite been able to. And I talked with friends about this, and it's interesting how Spain produces a very kind of cookie cutter kind of player, which they're all good, but none of
yeah.
them are great. I mean, you can maybe point out Pedri, which I think he is legitimately
Mhm.
that next level of quality, but he's been kind of hamstrung by hamstring injuries and whatnot. So it's just been tricky to really kind of the few that are kind of that special kind of talent to really make them flourish because of injury or other reasons. But yeah, just not having that kind of quality has really kind of held Spain back, because even like in the attack, Alvaro Morata remains the guy, the captain, the starting striker, which kind of goes to show just how much Spain just hasn't been able to find that magical recipe of producing players that are able to how to put it, just be that extra kind of like difference maker for the team. So that's kind of where they struggled. And again, like with Pedri, you could also throw Rodri in there, who I think is on a level of Busquets. But yeah, it's just been kind of tricky to like, we don't have that next level of talent, nor has the coaching been so incredibly great to compensate and be like one of these stories, like when Portugal won in 2016 the Euros, or Greece, or there just hasn't been that difference maker from the coaching side either. So just kind of everything's been kind of in this stasis of like, maybe some player does break through and makes every other piece kind of fall more into place and everything kind of functions a little bit better, but yet nothing's just kind of quite clicked to that ideal way.
Nice. So let's talk a bit about your current coach right now. So Luis de la Fuente is a man that probably hasn't or isn't as well known outside of Spain. Certainly in Spain, obviously, he hasn't had much of a coaching career as well, because I was looking up his history, Deportivo Alaves, and then he was part of the kind of under 21 setup, as well as the kind of youth ranks within Spain. So it's quite a surprise, given, I suppose, from my point of view, like Spain have historically kind of gone for more well-established like coaches previously for this role, leading up to it. But he's got a good record, so to speak, so far. What would you say is his credentials and what he's brought so far to this Spanish national team?
His credentials are basically what you've pointed out there already. The success, the mild success with the under 19s, under 21, under 23 that he's coached in Spain. And yeah, it's basically that, being a national team, a federation man, kind of like Southgate was kind of that in England. He kind of worked his way through and then kind of seized on the opportunity when Samuel Allardyce was dismissed. But yeah, it's kind of complicated. Yeah, just the same way he's not that well known out of Spain, he wasn't really that well known in Spain, because as you pointed out, he coached Alaves for a few months back in 2011, and he had been part of youth setups in Sevilla for a few years, and in Bilbao with Athletic Club's B team. So yeah, he was there, and he's always been like a pretty well respected like youth coach in those sort of levels, and no one had really anything bad to say about his credentials in that sense when he got appointed. But he got appointed kind of within the political turmoil of the federation, because like Luis Enrique and Rubiales were already kind of at odds. Everything was just kind of muddled, and when Spain got bounced out by Morocco at the World Cup, everything just kind of broke down ultimately. And so there, kind of Rubiales just kind of made that statement, like, we're gonna like not have a Twitch manager, someone that's like that kind of profile that we can't really control. So it's like, okay, we'll put in this guy. He's like quote unquote company man. Everyone will like be happy enough, and everything will just kind of tick along nicely enough. Then the following year or months later, and Rubiales ends up getting ousted as the president because of well documented incidents at the Women's World Cup. And so, yeah, it's everything, and everything just kind of everything has stayed in place kind of since then. Like Luis de la Fuente has stayed on as the manager because he's done well enough. Everything's just been like good enough with him, and the like year and a half since the World Cup. But yeah, and it's interesting because talking with people that know him a little bit better, that know Luis de la Fuente better, everyone kind of mentioned like his style, his general philosophy is that like of a generic and of a youth coach, like he is basically has a philosophy of having a team attack quite a bit, try to get the ball back as high up the pitch as possible. That is kind of within the general kind of sense of the team, and that's kind of what you want for a national team that is better than most. So someone that can coach good enough for the attack and has just a sense of like keeping things ticking along. Because again, like in comparison to what Luis Enrique was doing, nothing has really changed that much. Things have maybe been simplified a little bit. But again, that's just the sense that he does all the basics well, and it's just kind of wait and see to see if he can make a difference when like everything's kind of tight in a game against a equal or better team than Spain in the round of last 16 or the quarterfinals or the semifinals. So everything's kind of like a big challenge and kind of this like moment of truth for Luis de la Fuente, getting at what is now at 62 years old, his first big opportunity to like kind of prove himself and see if Spain can really do something and like kind of and try to like do better than at the World Cup and better than like I'm thinking that the Euros 20 years ago, because you mentioned previously that Spain had gone for more higher profile managers with Luis Enrique, with Lopetegui, with Del Bosque and Aragonés, the last previous four. And Luis de la Fuente is kind of a throwback to the manager in 2004, which was Iñaki Cano, who was, again, another product of the Bilbao setup that had kind of worked his way up, but that just wasn't that well known or that had that much of a high profile. So like the expectation or the hope is that, okay, we can do a little bit better. There's no kind of distractions. And the good thing with De La Fuente is he's not that polarizing of a figure as Luis Enrique was, which kind of, in his case, just had a lot of fans, but a lot of detractors too. So it's just kind of like keep things low profile and see how good we can do.
And touching just quickly on that sentiment about how he's kind of been, I suppose, not really exposed to this kind of level of like being in the tournament, etc. Do you think, or it would be interesting to understand if there is a feeling within Spain that will that inexperience maybe be, you know, a feeling that maybe this is why maybe Spain don't progress as far as maybe people think this squad should do? Or do you just think, look, it's tournament football, anything can happen really, it's just down to the players at the end of the day?
Yeah, I think it depends how it happens exactly, because like when Spain got eliminated by Morocco, a lot of the fingers pointed towards Luis Enrique explicitly, just because of how that game happened, of like Spain being so dominating, and which happened in 2018, to be fair, when Hierro took over Lopetegui and they got eliminated also in the round of last 16 against Russia, of like just being a super possession heavy team that just could not find a way to like penetrate well set defense, but again a team that should have been beaten as Morocco was. And so yeah, I think it will just matter a lot just how it happens, but more so that maybe apart from that, I think will be a general sense, unless again something very explicitly was a manager's choice that kind of everyone feels led to a bad outcome. I think it will just kind of be, the blame will just kind of be kind of 50-50 on like, oh, we didn't have that great of a manager, and neither do we have that great of a talent pool right now. So I think nothing will be too frantic or hysterical around like who's to blame for a potential early exit. Again, it will kind of depend a little bit on the specifics on how it happens, but I think everyone's just has their expectations pretty kind of even keel and pretty chill as to how well Spain can do this time around.
Well, let's talk about that talent pool. And I suppose you've mentioned a few of the players, and there's been some phenomenal players in terms of their performances this season. And I'm not going to try and spoil it. I'm just curious from your point of view, like who are the players do you think people should be wary of or should look out for from this Spanish squad? Because I'm looking down the list. There's some really interesting youngsters in that mix.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there is like again, even though I did mention before, like kind of we haven't had that next level of talent. A few of the players that have broken through in the last couple of years are pretty interesting, and like it's hopeful that they can maybe be that. But yeah, as far as the main youngsters, Pedri is still only 21, as I was mentioning earlier.
Mm,
He already has 18 caps. If he's healthy, if he's good to go, if he's game ready, he should be someone that can really make a difference for the Spanish team.
mhm,
And yeah, people such as Nico Williams from Athletic
mm,
Bilbao, like he will be someone that can be that has a potential to kind of like be that kind of difference maker on the offensive side of the ball, just because he's very young. He's been kind of raw in his previous in the last couple of years, and
mhm,
starting to be called up with Spanish national side. But he's someone that can, I think, break through into a little bit better of a player. Lamine Yamal, obviously, like he's the
yeah,
one that everyone looks towards, like, okay, like if he develops properly, if Barcelona are able to not run him into the ground, as kind of happened with Pedri a couple years ago,
yeah,
like he should be, like he seems like someone that does have. I mean, again, I've spoken to people close to the Barcelona youth setup that do say like if everything kind of goes properly, he will be a Ballon d'Or caliber
yeah,
of talent of player.
mhm,
So again, if he's able to really live up to the moment, like with Barcelona, he's already had a lot of promising games. He's someone
mhm,
that can really break through it, even at the early age of 16. Like if he has the chance, he can make or break
mhm,
this tournament for Spain. So that will be interesting to keep an eye out. And yeah, then it's just kind of like the 25 to 29 range, where like Spain's bread and butter is, as far as the most important players. Like Rodri should be key starter
mm,
as the pivot, as the center midfielder. And yeah, then it's just kind of how you set up everything around that with Pedri.
mm,
Most likely you have Fermin, who's 21 years old, from Barcelona, to do, like
yes,
he could maybe even have an opportunity if things go right. But yeah, alongside Rodri, you could the most logical thing would be to expect someone
mhm,
like Pedri, and then kind of see maybe Mikel Merino from Real Sociedad, maybe Martin Zubimendi,
mhm,
just kind of see how De La Fuente ends up setting everything up. And then the attack, you'll have Morata, and in defense, like you do have one player that's really promising too, also from Barcelona, which is Pau Cubarsí. In
yes,
his case, like
yeah,
he's also like Yamal, been very promising. He's had
mm,
the last games of the season has been a little more like not quite as like high level as his first few games with the team. Again, he's very young. You wouldn't expect like
yeah,
tip top consistency throughout, but he looks like someone that could be interesting. If again the Woods are already the kind of more settled first team players, like Robin Lenormand or
mm,
Laporte, also from Al Nasser now, formerly of Manchester City. And yeah, so it'll be interesting to kind of see who can kind of maybe be those difference makers, as I say. Maybe Grimaldo could be someone to look at. He's already
mhm,
28,
yeah,
but only has 2 caps with Spain, but he has had such a
sure.
phenomenal year with Bayer Leverkusen. So yeah, I think those are some of the main names to kind of keep an eye out, and just kind of see if they can like kind of translated that into a win. And again, and also I did want to say, it's kind of hard, as I've been on Luis de la Fuente in Spain generally, there has been the success with the Nations League, which is one of those things that's kind of looked at more as anecdotally, or kind of almost as a meme.
Yeah,
Like, okay, you
right,
won this thing, and yeah, it was good, but it doesn't quite have the prestige or the sense that
sure,
it's
yeah,
quite the proof that you are that good of a team. But he did at least was able to win that, get to the final four, win the final, and penalties against Croatia. So I think it will be interesting to see kind of how they all kind of progress.
mm. Well, you certainly touched on all the players that I had noted down. I was very interested to see whether you would mention all of the ones. So you've done really well on that
Yeah.
front. But I was definitely curious from your point of view, De La Fuente, is he the type of manager that would kind of put the kind of youngsters into this mix of squad, or do you think it will depend on the type of games that they're playing against as well?
I think it will depend on the games a little bit, because it's interesting. He has the profile of being someone generally conservative, sort of, kind
Mm,
of, again, an older manager that's kind of gone through all the different ranks in
sure.
football, but also by virtue of having that experience with the younger players, with the younger teams, I think he could be predisposed to giving those opportunities. Again, he's called up all these guys. It's not like all these guys are flourishing with Barcelona, with the different teams, and haven't and just been ignored. Like, he's trusted to take Yamal at 16 years old, Cubarsí at 17. Like, I think they all have a pretty good chance, even if they aren't quite like nailed on starters. Again, things don't quite click in the first couple of games. I wouldn't be surprised if they start seeing more minutes, more of a main role on the team. So I think it will be interesting to see to what degree he takes giving the younger players an opportunity if things are not quite hitting on all cylinders from the get-go.
Well, we haven't really touched on it, but now we're going to get to that point where I ask you where you think Spain are going to end up in this tournament. But what's fascinating is obviously we haven't even mentioned your group, or the group of death, as everyone kind of has alluded to, because you've got so many quality teams in your group, and it's going to be fascinating to watch how those group games kind of play out, especially when you've got a lot of those players that play for Spanish teams like Luka Modric, for example, and it'll be fascinating to see how those kind of games pan out. But I mean, generally, like if we said it from the offset, how do you feel? I mean, are you confident about the group stages even at this point?
Yeah, I would be, again, as I think I brushed on very briefly at the start. It would be a big surprise if Spain isn't amongst the 4 best third teams, or heaven forbid. It's interesting because is one would think with Croatia and Italy, it is quite probably the best of the 3, because again, Croatia is a little bit on the downswing, with Modric and everyone else just kind of being at the very late stage of their career. But I wouldn't be surprised too in Spain third. So again, I think those games are really up for grabs amongst those 3. I would expect all 3 to beat Albania. I would expect, but again, I think Albania does have enough potential to maybe get a win, a draw, even perhaps. From that, and just kind of how the matchups go amongst Italy, Croatia, and Spain. Spain did beat Croatia at the last Euros, but also and technically drawed with Italy in the semifinals, and then lost in the penalty shootout. So yeah, if I would have to bet, I think Spain could maybe K is probably maybe a little bit better than Spain generally, although quite similarly. Maybe Italy first, Spain second. Croatia third, get through the round of last 16 and into the quarterfinals. I think quarterfinals would be the general expectation, as I was kind of alluding to previously. Like, again, if things really shake out well for Spain, they could even advance to the semifinals or even the final. But if nothing super surprising happens, or they're not quite really inspired as a team to take the team itself, beaten by a better side in the quarterfinals, but having enough to have a solid tournament, being able to get through the group stage, hopefully first or second, and from there advance to at least one round, and maybe later kind of see how the bracket turns out, and maybe they can get an easier matchup for the quarterfinals too, so that could play a role too. But again, my prediction, my fence sitting prediction would be quarterfinals and not too much more.
Well, fingers crossed for Spain. I hope we get to see the best of Spain, certainly from a point of view of performances as well, because I'm really excited about this group of players. And I'm sure if it's not this tournament, I'm sure we'll see a very exciting Spain squad in the tournaments ahead. So many thanks to you, Anders, for really joining us and taking us through Spain. Before we let you go, where can people find your work, more importantly?
Yeah, people can find my work basically on my Twitter handle at Anders Hoffman, but if they search Andre Iturralde, as they've probably seen in the title or description, they can find basically all my work aggregated there. I have a Spanish-speaking podcast if people want to work on their Spanish. I have a Spanish speaking podcast dedicated mostly to the Premier League, but we'll be doing pretty detailed coverage of the Euros. I think we'll start at the group stage. We'll do like 3 to 4 shows a week. Then after every match day, once the run of last 16 begins. So yeah, people can find me there if they want to work on their Spanish again. And again, I'll be tweeting stuff in Spanish as well as English. And yes, sometimes I'll even do a longer form stuff in English too. But yeah, on my Twitter, everyone can see the majority or basically everything that I churn out. Everything's aggregated there. So that's where they can find it.
Fantastic. Well, we'll make sure that we'll be in contact, because hopefully we'll see if we can get you back on to talk about Spain and their success for us, the group stages. So thank you, Anders, and we'll see you hopefully soon.